Friday, 12th of October 1984. An IRA bomb rips through Brighton's Grand Hotel and nearly kills Margaret Thatcher. Then comes the statement that still freezes blood. Today we were unlucky, but remember, we only have to be lucky once. You will have to be lucky always. Most detailed accounts place the explosion at 2:54 in the morning, while the Conservative Party conference slept behind the Grand Hotel's Victorian façade on Brighton's seafront. Margaret Thatcher was awake in her first-floor suite, working on the speech she was due to deliver that day. 6 floors above her, a long-delayed bomb planted weeks earlier by Provisional IRA member Patrick Magee detonated inside room 629. The blast tore upward through the hotel and dislodged a chimney stack weighing 5 long tons. It crashed through several floors. 5 people died. Conservative MP Sir Anthony Berry, Eric Taylor, Lady Jeanne Shattock, Lady Muriel Maclean and Roberta Wakeham. Between 31 and 34 people were injured. Trade Secretary Norman Tebbit was badly wounded. His wife, Margaret Tebbit, was left permanently paralysed. Thatcher was physically unhurt. At roughly 4 a.m, she decided the conference would continue. 6.5 hours after the bomb, she walked into the hall and gave her leader's speech. The bomb attack on the Grand Hotel early this morning, she said, was first and foremost an inhuman, undiscriminating attempt to massacre innocent, unsuspecting men and women. Then came the answer from the IRA. Britain had escaped once, it would have to escape every time. That was the arithmetic of the conflict. The real battle of this story is Provisional IRA active service units against Britain's intelligence and SAS machine. After Brighton proved the IRA could reach a Prime Minister inside England, surveillance, warning and pre-positioned armed teams increasingly turned IRA attack units into the hunted. Loughgall and Gibraltar showed how effective that system could be. They also showed the cost of relying on it. To understand why a bomb in a Brighton hotel mattered so much, go back to the border. The Government of Ireland Act came into force on the 3rd of May 1921. 6 counties, Antrim, Armagh, Down, Fermanagh, Londonderry and Tyrone, became Northern Ireland. The other 26 counties became the basis of Southern Ireland and, after the Anglo-Irish Treaty, the Irish Free State. Northern Ireland remained inside the United Kingdom. Partition didn't automatically create the Troubles. The conflict escalated in the late 1960s amid civil rights protests, discrimination in housing and employment, political crisis, loyalist and republican violence, and the deployment of British troops. The Troubles are commonly dated from 1968 to the Good Friday Agreement in 1998. Roughly 3,500 people died. The Provisional IRA emerged from a split in the IRA during 1969 and 1970. Its stated objective was direct: end British rule in Northern Ireland and create a united 32-county Irish Republic. Supporters described that campaign as armed resistance. British and Irish authorities, and many of its victims, described it as terrorism because it used bombings, shootings, assassinations, and intimidation against soldiers, police, prison officers, political figures, civilians, and commercial targets. That distinction mattered politically. It didn't alter what an active service unit could do with a bomb. Brighton demonstrated the reach of the campaign. Magee had checked into the hotel under the name Roy Walsh on the 15th of September, nearly 4 weeks before the conference. He acquired room 629 on the 6th floor, concealed the device behind a bath panel, and left before the hotel filled with ministers, delegates, police, and the Prime Minister. A security cordon around a conference hotel had not stopped a device placed before the cordon existed. Britain couldn't protect every hotel room, every car park, every barracks gate, every patrol route, every public ceremony, every politician, every off-duty police officer, or every crowded street. The state had more men and more weapons than the IRA, but the IRA could choose time, place, and target. So British security policy increasingly concentrated on the moment before an attack. The SAS wasn't a separate intelligence service. It depended on a larger system. The RUC and its special branch, Army Intelligence, MI5, surveillance teams, informants, technical collection, military command, and police investigators. The British Army's 14 Intelligence Company, often called 14 INT or the Det, provided covert surveillance against paramilitary targets during the conflict. Its role was to watch, identify, follow, and report. The point wasn't simply to find a suspect after an attack. It was to identify a likely operation before it happened, monitor the people and vehicles involved, alter the target's security posture, and place armed officers or soldiers where the suspected attackers would appear. That method could save lives. It could also turn an attempted arrest into a lethal confrontation if the intelligence, planning, or threat assessment was wrong. Loughgall was the hard-edged version of the method working as intended. Loughgall, pronounced Loughgall, is a village in County Armagh. Its RUC station was a small target in a rural war. By 1987, the Provisional IRA's East Tyrone Brigade had developed a dangerous reputation for attacks on isolated security bases. The brigade had used a specific method before. A digger carrying explosives would breach a perimeter. Armed men would fire on the station. The bomb would destroy the building, and the attackers would withdraw before reinforcements could respond. On Friday, 8 May 1987, an 8-man East Tyrone Active Service Unit moved to use that method at Loughgall. Its members were Declan Arthurs, Seamus Donnelly, Tony Gormley, Eugene Kelly, Patrick Joseph Kelly, Jim Linner, Padraig McKerney, and Gerard O'Callaghan. They had a stolen JCB backhoe. In its front bucket sat an approximately 200-pound bomb. A blue Toyota Hi-Ace van carried members of the armed assault team. Their objective was to breach the station, detonate the bomb, and fire on security personnel. A 200-pound bomb is roughly the weight of an adult man. Put it in the bucket of a construction machine, drive it through the fence of a police station, and it becomes both a breaching tool and a demolition charge. The JCB came through the perimeter. The bomb exploded. The station was heavily damaged. Flames and debris filled the compound. The attack was real. It wasn't a reconnaissance mission. It was a bomb and gun assault on an RUC base. But the station had already been prepared for the attack. British security forces had advanced intelligence that Loughgall was the intended target. The exact source remains disputed. Accounts differ over how long the warning had existed and over precisely how the station's normal staffing had been altered. What is established is that Operation Judy, a joint SAS and RUC operation, was waiting. SAS soldiers and RUC officers had been positioned inside and around the station before the assault began. Concealed positions covered the approach routes. The attackers believed they were entering a target area. They were entering an interception. After the blast, gunfire erupted. The later Historical Inquiries Team review concluded that the IRA unit fired first and that the attackers couldn't have been safely arrested. Earlier accounts had differed about the opening shots, but the HET finding matters because it places the exchange inside an armed assault already underway. All 8 IRA members were killed. That was the operational outcome Britain wanted after Brighton. A bomb team identified before detonation could kill police officers, a station already covered, and an active service unit stopped in the middle of its attack. This wasn't an arrest operation that went wrong in a town centre. It was a prepared response to an armed attack on a police station. But Loughgall didn't end with the 8 men in the van and around the JCB. Anthony Hughes, 36, was driving home with his brother Oliver after repairing a lorry. Their car entered the ambush area behind the IRA van. Soldiers mistook the car for an IRA support vehicle and opened fire. Anthony Hughes was killed. Oliver survived serious gunshot injuries. Anthony Hughes wasn't the 9th member of the IRA unit. He wasn't part of the attack. The British government later acknowledged that he was wholly innocent and apologised to his family. That single car changes the moral geometry of Loughgall. An experienced IRA unit had carried out a bomb and gun attack. Security forces had warning, laid an ambush, and destroyed the unit. Yet a civilian entered the same lethal zone and died because the armed men in concealment judged his vehicle to be part of the operation. The tactical picture was clear enough to stop the assault. It wasn't clear enough to protect everyone near it. Loughgall also left legal questions that didn't disappear with the fire at the station. A 1995 inquest found that all 9 men died from serious and multiple gunshot wounds. The families later brought the case to Strasbourg. The European Court of Human Rights found failures in the investigation into the deaths. That ruling concerned the adequacy and transparency of the investigative process. It wasn't a judgment that every shooting at Loughgall had been unlawful, and it didn't reverse the HET's later conclusion that the IRA attackers couldn't have been safely arrested. The case stayed open in public memory because the questions were larger than the trigger pull. How much warning had the state received? Could the road have been sealed? Could civilians have been kept away? What evidence should families have been permitted to examine? For the SAS and the wider security system, Loughgall was proof that intelligence could turn an IRA attack plan back on the team that made it. For the Hughes family, it was proof that a kill zone does not distinguish cleanly between an attacker and a man driving home. 10 months later, the same British system would confront a suspected IRA operation far from County Armagh. This time, the setting was Gibraltar. By late 1987, British authorities believed the IRA was planning an attack on the Rock. Intelligence and surveillance linked the expected target to the changing of the guard ceremony near the governor's residence, where British military personnel assembled. The planned ceremony was held on Tuesday mornings. The suspected method was a car bomb. 3 IRA members came under surveillance in Spain: Sean Savage, Daniel McCann, and Mairead Farrell. McCann was 30, Farrell was 31, Savage was 24. British, Spanish, and Gibraltar authorities monitored activity on the Costa del Sol. An SAS team was sent to Gibraltar. The operation received the code name Operation Flavius. The intended purpose, recorded in the planning, was to protect life, foil the attempt, arrest the offenders, and secure them for custody. That is important because Gibraltar wasn't formally designed as a military execution mission. The operational order described surveillance, arrest, minimum force, and the gathering of evidence for a subsequent trial. But the intelligence briefing also carried a lethal assumption. The team was believed to be dangerous, likely armed, and likely to use a large car bomb. Military personnel were warned that the device might be detonated by remote control. If that were true, a hand movement toward a pocket, bag, or jacket could be read as an attempt to kill everyone nearby. On Sunday, the 6th of March 1988, Savage crossed into Gibraltar in a Renault. An MI5 officer identified him after he parked the car near the parade assembly area. Later that afternoon, McCann and Farrell crossed from Spain on foot and met him. By about 3:40 p.m, the Gibraltar Police Commissioner handed control of the interception to the senior SAS officer. The 3 IRA members separated as SAS soldiers moved in. Savage headed south. McCann and Farrell continued near Winston Churchill Avenue outside a petrol station. The official account given by the soldiers was that, as they closed in, each suspect made a movement that appeared to threaten immediate detonation. One soldier believed McCann moved his arm across his body toward a remote detonator. He believed Farrell reached toward her handbag. The soldiers following Savage said they believed he reached toward his jacket pocket. All three were shot dead. The shooting happened in public, on streets filled with vehicles, police, military personnel, and civilians. One bullet grazed a passerby. Then the physical evidence began to cut against the assumptions that had made the shooting seem necessary. No weapons were found on Sean Savage, Daniel McCann, or Mairead Farrell. No bomb or detonator was found on their bodies. No bomb was found in Savage's Renault on Gibraltar. The Renault had been treated as a possible car bomb. It was empty. 2 days later, Spanish police found 141 pounds of Czech-made explosives in a car in southern Spain. Spanish authorities linked that cash to the 3 IRA members. Those facts have to be held together. There was no device on the 3 people when they died. There was no bomb in the Renault they had parked on Gibraltar. But British authorities had been tracking a team they believed was preparing a car bomb attack, and explosives were found in Spain shortly afterward. The question was whether the operation had been planned in a way that made killing more likely than arrest. A Gibraltar inquest returned verdicts of lawful killing. The families of McCann, Farrell and Savage took the case to the European Court of Human Rights. On 27 September 1995, the court ruled in McCann and others v United Kingdom that Britain had violated Article 2 of the European Convention on Human Rights, the right to life. The judgment didn't say that individual SAS soldiers had knowingly executed harmless people. The court accepted that the soldiers honestly believed lethal force was necessary based on the information available to them at the moment they fired. Its criticism was directed at planning and control. The court concluded that the intelligence passed to the soldiers, the failure to arrest the suspects at the border, and the operational assumptions about an imminent remote-controlled bomb created circumstances in which lethal force became almost inevitable. That distinction matters. The Article 2 finding wasn't a murder conviction against anonymous soldiers. It was a judgment that the state's planning and control of the operation had failed the stricter legal test required when state agents use lethal force. Whether commanders knew before the shootings that the Renault contained no bomb remains disputed. The vehicle was discovered to be empty afterward. The available record does not settle what every commander, bomb disposal advisor, or soldier knew in the seconds before the shots. But the visible contradiction remains permanent. 3 people killed in the street, unarmed, with no bomb in their car on Gibraltar. Loughgall and Gibraltar therefore became twin symbols of the intelligence war. At Loughgall, an armed IRA unit arrived with a stolen JCB, an approximately £200 bomb, automatic weapons, and a plan to destroy an RUC station. The SAS and RUC had warning and were waiting. 8 attackers died. A wholly innocent civilian, Anthony Hughes, also died. At Gibraltar, an IRA team under surveillance was believed to be preparing a military parade bombing. The team was intercepted in the street. All 3 were unarmed. The suspected Renault contained no bomb. Explosives were later found in Spain. Strasbourg found that the state's planning and control violated Article 2. One operation delivered the brutal clarity of an armed assault stopped at the point of attack. The other exposed the danger of allowing a feared bomb to dominate every calculation before anyone sees one. Neither operation settled the political war. The Provisional IRA didn't collapse after Loughgall. The East Tyrone Brigade continued operating. The IRA continued attacks in Northern Ireland, Britain, and continental Europe. The SAS, RUC, Army Intelligence, MI5 and surveillance teams continued to disrupt operations, make arrests, recover weapons and pressure the organisation. Britain could win contacts. It could stop individual bomb teams. It could make operations harder, riskier and more expensive. It couldn't shoot the constitutional question away. The IRA, meanwhile, could hurt Britain and make Northern Ireland costly to govern. Brighton proved that. But it couldn't bomb Britain into a clean withdrawal either. The campaign produced suffering on a vast scale, but not the united Ireland it sought. By the 1990s, the conflict had become a coercive stalemate. The Provisional IRA announced a cessation of military operations on 31st of August 1994. That ceasefire broke down in 1996, then resumed on the 19th of July 1997. Political negotiations followed. On the 10th of April 1998, the Belfast Agreement, better known as the Good Friday Agreement, was signed. It created a framework for power sharing in Northern Ireland, North-South institutions, British-Irish cooperation, policing reform, decommissioning, prisoner releases, and the reduction of security arrangements built during the war. Its central constitutional principle was consent. Northern Ireland would remain part of the United Kingdom unless a majority of its people chose otherwise. A united Ireland could happen only through peaceful means and the consent of majorities north and south of the border. That was a political answer to the question that bombs, ambushes, intelligence operations, and armed patrols had failed to resolve. The Provisional IRA formally ended its armed campaign in July 2005. Decommissioning followed. No battlefield surrender took place at Loughgall. No SAS operation forced the Good Friday Agreement into existence. The settlement came through ceasefires, negotiations, political shifts, British-Irish cooperation, international involvement, public pressure, and the accumulated recognition that neither side could impose its desired end state by force. But the intelligence war mattered. It narrowed operational space. It forced IRA units to think about surveillance, informers, target monitoring, and the possibility that an attack route had already been mapped by someone watching. It made the state's defensive burden less impossible. And it left a legacy no agreement could erase. Dissident Republican groups have carried out sporadic violence since 1998. That isn't the same operational scale as the Provisional IRA at the height of the Troubles. It's a continuing, serious, residual threat, not proof that the old war has returned intact. The deeper residue is memory. At Brighton, 5 people died in a bomb intended to kill a Prime Minister. At Loughgall, 8 IRA attackers died during an assault on a police station, and Anthony Hughes died after being mistaken for part of it. At Gibraltar, 3 IRA members were killed unarmed, and the European Court found that Britain's planning and control of the operation breached the right to life. Those cases still divide families, veterans, lawyers, former combatants and communities because they contain both parts of the conflict at once: real bombing threats and the terrible power a state claims when it decides it can't wait for a bomb to appear. Brighton stated the problem in one sentence: the IRA only had to be lucky once. The state had to be lucky always.